Can you hear me? Okay, it's on. Okay. Shh. That scared me. All right, so we're going to we're going to continue our study over the life of Christ tonight, and we find ourselves this evening in Luke, the 19th chapter. So we've made it to essentially the last, I guess you could say, the last kind of moments before Jesus enters that final week of his life. And so we are nearing the end of his physical life. Of course, he's going to spend a little bit of time on earth after the resurrection, and so on and so forth. But in regards to his, physical life, walking around in a physical sense, we are approaching those final days. And what we have here tonight, what we're going to be looking at tonight, is right there on the 10th day mark or so. And we're looking at the story of Zacchaeus, which I'm sure a lot of us have probably heard, a lot of us have studied. There's been a lot of lessons on it, I'm sure. But I want to go over pretty much almost all of Luke 19 because it kind of fits in together. And I feel like a lot of times when we talk about Zacchaeus in Luke 19, we talk about just Zacchaeus. We don't talk about the parable that is told directly after it and what that looks like. And so starting in Luke 19, we see this story. It says, "Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector." I'm moving this down because I feel like I'm screaming at you all. Okay, he was a chief tax collector, and he was rich, and he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, "Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house." So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, "He has gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner." Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, I gave half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost." So as we see this story, I'm sure a lot of us have read it and studied it. It is so important when we look at this story to know that Jesus is so near to that triumphant entry. He is so near to entering for that final time. He is, 10 days out from raising up. He's several days away from being arrested. He's several days away from being nailed on a cross. He's several days away from all of these different things. And as he's passing through Jericho, he has this encounter. We can see it when we talked about it. It's probably been 4 months now. But when Jesus is walking across the water, he looks over. I believe it's in Mark 6, if I remember correctly. He looks over and he sees them in distress in the boat. He stops and he has compassion. Jesus does this so many times. He is going through something, or he's about to go through something bad. He's experiencing something bad, something harsh, yet he still stops and has compassion. He still stops and thinks about his creation. And here, Jesus, you have to think he's now told his followers numerous times that he is going to die. He is going to raise in the third day. At one point, they said, "No, no, you're not. We're going to stand up for you." This, that, and the other. The last time he told them, they didn't even quite understand what was going on. But Jesus has told them, like, things are going to take place. And so here is Jesus. He's going through Jericho. The followers, the folks with them, still aren't understanding everything that's about to take place. But in the back of Jesus's mind, you have to just imagine, Jesus is like, this is one of the last things I do before I make this final entry. And then all of these things are about to take place. So he still stops. He still has compassion. I think that should be a teaching for us today. Sometimes the world can really get nasty. Sometimes the world can really get us down, get us discouraged. Sometimes we just have to stop and we have to breathe and remember that there is a greater battle going on. There is a greater mission that is going on. Just because the world seems to be crumbling, don't mean that we can stop, breathe, and still remember that we're working for the kingdom. We're serving the kingdom. And so Jesus is a beautiful example of that, obviously, but we can also learn from that. And so as he goes through, there was a man named Zacchaeus. I guess we could all sing the song if we wanted to, but he was a wee little man, wasn't he? He's a short little stature guy, wasn't he? I'm going to get that song stuck in everyone's head tonight. And then when the snow comes on Friday, you'll be sitting in your house. You can't get out of your cabin, wherever you're at. And you're just going to be singing about Zacchaeus. But he was a chief tax collector, and he was also rich. And so he's got a couple things going for him. And as we're going to see later on, Jesus tells us he's also a son of Abraham. And so as you can imagine, if you are going to be in this area, if you're going to be a Jew or so forth, anybody that's going to be a tax collector, you are not going to be liked very much at all. So it's kind of one of those occupations where people are not going to really take too kindly to you because the way they perceive it is you're taking their money and you're giving it to Rome. And so you have twofold here. Not only is he a tax collector, but he's also rich. As we can kind of see later on in verse, I believe it's into verse 8. As we can see in verse 8, he kind of makes this, if I've taken money falsely from anyone, I'll give it back fourfold. So his richness, most likely, I guess you could just have to take some assumptions here, was not because he was taking advantage of people to a certain extent, because if he is offering to repay people fourfold, he's going to have the funds to do that. So maybe he got his money some ways from that. We're not giving all of it, but he was both a tax collector and he was rich. So he had possessions, he had things. Verse 3, and he sought to see who Jesus was. Now, this was something that a lot of folks have been trying to do for numerous amounts of time. After Jesus had fed the thousands on different occasions, people would follow him, and they were looking for more food. They were looking for this, that, and the other. They were wanting to see miracles. So there's people always wanting to see Jesus. There's curiosity about Jesus. That's like whenever Jesus performs a miracle, you see it followed up with teachings and vice versa. So this is another instance where now someone is curious. Someone is wanting to learn more about Jesus. Someone is seeking out Jesus. So in verse 3 it says, and he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not see because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. Now, this right here, physical sense, he can't see over the crowd. This always reminds me of Tennessee football games, and I always try to be a good person when it comes to this. I know it's funny, it reminds me of Tennessee football games. You have the wall walk come down, and I'm sure all these other schools have different things too. But there's always kids. I mean, I don't know about all the other stadiums, but the Tennessee Vol Walk, there can be 50, 60,000 people lined up on basically just a 90-degree turn, right? And it could be 15, 20 something people deep. And there's always some like 6 to like 8-year-old, like, please let me just see a player. This is like the greatest thing that's ever happened in my life. And so I always try to just shove them as far forward as I can and just push them through like they're my kid or something. I don't know. But that's kind of, Zacchaeus is wanting to see, he can't, shorter stature. Sometimes people want to see more about Jesus and not from a physical sense, but we can kind of distract them. We can kind of hinder them from that by our actions. And that's something we have to remember too. Here Zacchaeus is hindered because of physical sense, because he's shorter. Can we hinder people today from starting to see that, from wanting to come into church? Can we be a distraction? Can we be a discouragement from that? The example that I always like to go to is when there's a bickering inside the church. There's fighting inside the church. People sit on opposite sides of the pews. I sit on the fourth pew up there, but Dale, he sits like 8 pews back on the other side. Because we're not getting along, right? And so then visitors come in, and you can sense the tension. You know what I'm saying? You can see when people don't get along if they walk by and they're both members and they're not greeting people well. Why would anyone want to come into an environment that doesn't have love and care and compassion for one another? Is that not what we're supposed to have? Right? And so if we're not showing Jesus to one another, if we're not acting Christ-like, people in the world can sense that, and we can definitely be a barrier for people to see, for people to not be able to see Jesus. Now, that being said, that cannot be an excuse for them, right? They should still be able to see, they should still be seeking out their own salvation. But we need to not be a hindrance to that. And the Pharisees, Jesus has called them out because of that before, because they've made up different things. They're making it harder for people to obtain. They've added things. And you can see different groups today add things that need to be a part of salvation according to them. And you're just adding things that are not necessary. And so here he wants to see, but he's of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him. For he was going to pass that way. Now, a lot of times we see sycamore tree, we think sycamore tree in our head. It's not that kind of sycamore tree. This is more of a fig tree. If I had a PowerPoint, I'd show more of a picture. If you want to see a picture, I'll show it to you off my phone. But it is it's got a shorter trunk that kind of branches off, so it's a little bit easier to climb. And so you can kind of get a easier view from it, and it's not too difficult to climb. So he climbs up into the sycamore tree, aka a fig tree. It's different than our sycamore trees here. For he was going to pass that way. Verse 5. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus. Now that's one of the most important things I think you see in this whole story. Jesus passes by and he looks up. Zacchaeus. He knows his name, and you have to imagine, based off what the conversation is going to take place later, he knows a whole lot about Zacchaeus. Does he know our name? Does he know a whole lot about us? Yeah. Now that can be a good thing, and that can be a terrifying thing, can it? He knows everything. It's a good thing because he knows it's going to take place in the future. He knows all these different things, right? He can be a great source for us. He knows everything, which means he also knows what? He knows if we're being true to our faith. He knows if we're just dressed real nice on Sundays and Wednesdays, or if we're, maybe we're not dressed to the hills, but we're clean on the inside. We're good on the inside, right? So he knows everything. So he says, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. He has to. He needs to. I must stay at your house. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained. Boy, if you could cut out a portion of the Bible and literally just put it on a wall and say, this is what the world does today over good things. This is the verse. Is that person getting something that I desire to have? I'm going to complain about it. You see it a lot in jobs today. Someone will get a promotion. And so often the people that work with that person, they ain't happy they got a promotion. They ain't happy they got a raise because they wanted the raise. They wanted the promotion. And sometimes you can see that inside of congregations. Sometimes people are growing closer and closer to Christ. Maybe they have an opportunity to teach for the first time or whatever it may be, and someone else desires that. Well, now there's complaining. Now there's whatever it may be. And I mentioned this, I want to say a month ago. We have to be careful not to judge someone based off of their appearance, because judging someone based off their appearance can also lead to this right here. You mean to tell me they can look like that, they can dress like that, they can be from, as they went with Jesus, they can be from that town and be of something to do X, Y, or Z? So we have to be mindful of that, right? We have to be mindful. They all complained, saying, he has gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner. Did Jesus go to just eat with sinners to eat with sinners? What did Jesus do whenever he went to eat with sinners? According to them. Now we can talk about if he's really a sinner in this situation or not, but that's how they viewed him. What did Jesus do to eat when he went to eat with people? Every single time he went to eat with somebody. Anybody? He taught them. He gave a prescription. People like to say, well, Jesus ate with sinners, therefore I can. I guess you can. You better be handing out a prescription too, because that's what Jesus did. So if you want to eat with sinners like Jesus, you want to say ate with sinners. Jesus gave out teachings whenever he ate with people that needed teachings. He would go into the Pharisees' house, didn't he? And what'd he do? I mean, he just ran them. I mean, he just ran them up, right? Everything that they needed to be corrected on, he went to it. And Jesus was handing out prescriptions. So whenever we are eating with guests, whenever we are around folks that don't know the gospel, what should we be doing? Talking about the gospel, teaching about the gospel, being an example, being in a light. And also, what's the world going to do? Complain. Don't act surprised when the world complains about you. I don't know why we get so it's like we're shocked. It's like we're caught off guard when the world doesn't like us and when the world complains about us, as if Christ didn't tell us that was going to take place. We know it's going to take place, yet guess what we're still going to be? We're still going to be overcomers. Kathy?
I know you said say with everything, and I get that some people choose to live a life of sin, but think about it was carrying on about like he's a sinner. And the point is, we're all sinners. And everybody else was saying, oh, he's eating with sinners. Well, he was eating with people that maybe were more open and he knew their hearts to receiving his message and realizing, oh, I'm a sinner. But the people that were calling the people sinners that he was eating with weren't quite as open to having a heart change. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. If you,
I'm thinking that we all need to remember that we're all sinners and we all needed Jesus to eat with us. You know, do you understand?
yeah, and if you go back to Luke 18, we talked about this a few weeks back, but it's that perfect example. And if we're not careful, we can take the mindset of, look at that person, he's with a sinner. Do all of us have sin? Yeah. Now, when you look at Luke 18, if you go to verse 9, it said, and he spoke this parable to some who trusted themselves that were righteous and despised others. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you that I what? That I am not like other men. A little bit of a lofty prayer, huh? Extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this, what? Tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a what? A sinner. See the difference in perspective? I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who what? Exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. It's exactly what Kathy's talking about. It's what Jesus was talking about shortly before this. We all have a sin problem. Now, some of us have contacted the solution to the sin problem, and others haven't. So there can be differences there. But oh, look at Jesus. He's eating with that old sinner over there. Is his baggage heavier than my baggage, or is our baggage both going to get us dead if we don't find forgiveness for the baggage that we have? I don't care if you packed light on the baggage or if you packed real heavy on the baggage. If you don't have the baggage removed, you still got it. So it don't matter if you take one shirt or if you take 1,000 shirts on vacation. It's going to get you in the same place if you don't contact the forgiveness portion. So we have to be careful of the mindset. Kathy brings up a good point with that. So be mindful of that. Remember that and we also have to remind this too. We have to remind ourselves that all of us are under construction all of the time. Sometimes we can look off and be like, as this Pharisee did at the beginning of Luke 18, God, thank you, I'm not like that person. Thank you, I'm not like that person over there. We have to be real careful, right, with comparing ourselves to others, but B, tearing other people down.
There's nothing new of it. No. Today, it's nothing new because that's what Christ did in his whole ministry.
Yeah.
He corrected those that were supposed to be the righteous more so than he did anybody else.
Yeah.
So, we need to take inventory of ourselves, and because he talked to us a whole lot.
Yeah, and when you really look at the Pharisees and the Sadducees, what did they think they were better than other people? Can that same mindset creep into congregations today?
Yeah.
Real quick. Now, can we be better off than other people? Yes. Are we better? No. We all got the same sin problem. We all come from what? We're all from dust into what? To dust we will return. You can walk on what man was created from. You can go out there and you can find you some dust. You can walk what from man was created from. And to that we're going to return. The soul is going somewhere else. So we can be better off. We have to remember, just because we're better off does not mean that we get to sit there and stomp over someone else. And I used this a couple weeks back with marriage and how God made Eve from Adam's side, not from the head or not from the foot. It was from the side so they could walk side by side in companionship. Same thing with brothers and sisters in Christ. We need to be walking side by side in companionship, not kicking one another down just to build ourselves up, to run faster up the ladder than somebody else. We're all trying to get to the same location, and all of us need to be excited for that location, Sue.
Well, I like the story because looking at the verbs in it, you get a good opinion of Zacchaeus because he wanted to see Jesus. He ran on ahead. He didn't just push people away and try to get through the crowd, but he said, oh, here's a good way to go to the street. So he climbed a tree. Now, what man would find it easy in those garbs that they had in those days to climb a tree? Well, he went beyond, climbed the tree, and then when Jesus told him to hurry and come down, he hurried and came down. And he received him gladly into his home. And then he went over the top in what he would do if he had treated anyone unfairly. He didn't just say, well, I won't do that anymore. But he said, I'm going to pay them back 4 times if I cheated them. And I will give half my goods to the poor. So, I mean, he was up right there with all these verbs and what he did. And then Jesus said, salvation is coming to his house. Jesus knew his heart. If he had thought, well, he's going to go on cheating people, but no, he said, salvation is coming to his house.
Yeah, and the way Zacchaeus goes into verse 8, and he said, I'll just go ahead and give half of my goods to the poor. Can we think of anyone else that would maybe ask a question to Jesus and Jesus had to tell him to give away all of his stuff? Was he ecstatic? Was he just thrilled as could be? Sign me up for that one, right? Jesus didn't tell Zacchaeus, I'm going to need you to give away half. What'd Zacchaeus do? I'm going to do it. Now, we don't have all the conversation of what Jesus is eating at the table, but he says, Lord, or look, Lord, I give half my goods to the poor. And if I've taken anything, I'm going to give back fourfold. I'm going to restore it. I'm not going to just give back what I've taken. I'm going to give back more than that. And so Zacchaeus is really showing this honest heart. And when you go into it in verse 9, and Sue mentioned this, but today salvation has come to this house. Zacchaeus found salvation because he went out of the way to what? Make sure that he could get it. There's barriers, and I'm sure a lot of us have talked about this with this story. Did Zacchaeus have barriers that he had to get around? Did he have a physical limitation that hindered him from seeing physically Jesus? It's very unfortunate when something physical can hinder us in this world, but sometimes people can let something that can physically hinder our body. It can put a lot of anger in their heart, and it can keep them from seeing who Christ is and the beauties that they see in this world. It could be a tragic accident. It could be some health issue, whatever it may be, something physical that can physically harm them. Why would God do that to me? Why? I thought God was good and this, that, and the other, and they missed all of this. Zacchaeus didn't say, man, I'm short, I can't see Jesus, I'm just going to head to the house. These folks are too tall. Maybe I'll catch him next time. Because what happens if Zacchaeus says, well, I'll catch him the next time he comes through Jericho? Well, there ain't a next time, is there? Because what's Jesus on the way to do? See, you got a point. There ain't a next time. He gone. He's not, he's what? Till last time he's going to be passing through here. Did Zacchaeus know that? Nope. Do we know the last time Jesus is going to be passing through offering us an invitation? Nope. So we can't let something, a physical limitation hinder us, but we can't be letting these things of the world either. There's barriers here. Did Zacchaeus just stand at it and knock and say, can I please just remove some of these barriers and just, okay, if not, that's fine, I'll go home. He also didn't just run through and kick down the door either. Zacchaeus has said, all right, let me get creative. And that's something that maybe we've lost a little bit in the world too, is a little bit of our creative side. Zacchaeus, what? He thought outside the box. He didn't get pinned in the box. He thought outside the box. He said, I just got to find a way to see Jesus. And I bet you there wasn't very many folks willing to climb a tree to see Jesus. But if I have to go climb, I don't know if anyone here is scared of heights, but if you go climb some tree to see Jesus or to find salvation, sign me up. If I have to learn how to do a cartwheel in order to obtain heaven, I will be practicing and learning how to do a cartwheel as soon as I get that commandment. Then I ain't got a chance of doing a cartwheel, but I will give it my all to learn how to do that cartwheel if that's what I got to do to obtain salvation. And that's the mindset that we should have. If we see something that we need to do in order to obtain salvation, do whatever it takes to get there. Because there's nothing more important than obtaining heaven. And so this day, salvation came into the house because he also was a son of Abraham. Do you think that maybe would upset the Pharisees and the Sadducees and maybe some other folks if he's a son of Abraham? He's a tax collector, son of Abraham, and now Jesus is eating with him, and now Jesus is saying he's got salvation. Now he ain't got salvation, I've got it, right? Isn't that what the Pharisees are going to be thinking and saying? they're missing the mark. And they said they were sons of Abraham, and Jesus responded and told them that they weren't sons of Abraham, but they were instead what? Sons of the devil. They didn't take too kind of that either. But that's what Jesus has already spoke to them, probably 4 months ahead of this. In verse 10 here as well. And this is another part that it also really goes, I don't think Jesus right here is necessarily going after the Pharisees and Sadducees, but he said something similar to this before when he kind of was going after them in a way. It says, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost." He did not come to seek and save those who think they got it all going on and they don't need no help at all. Did the Pharisees and Sadducees think they already got it figured out? They thought they had everything figured out. Can we think we have everything figured out in the world today? Mentioned it on Sunday morning, but sometimes the world kicks you down and tries to pin you down to make you give up. Other times, the world's like, let me just pump. Yeah, let me put you on a pedestal. Let me pump up that ego. I'm going to put you about this high. That way you feel like you're better than everybody else. And I'm going to watch you what? Rely on yourself and crumble. And we can fall for it. Pharisees and Sadducees, they think they had it all figured out, but they were missing. They literally were. They had salvation in their house too. Did they take it? No, they tried to stone it, right? We got to get this guy out of here. We got to run him out of town. They had the exact same opportunity. Jesus ate at their table as well. So salvation had come to their house, but they didn't see it. They didn't take it. And salvation can come to our table and can come to our house as well. But if we don't take it, we're just like those Pharisees and Sadducees. We're just missing the mark. And so he came to seek those which were lost. And here's the important thing for us too. Are we or were we lost? Yes. You're always one of them. I guess at one point, you could be both of them, because at one point you could be lost and you could now be saved and you could now be found. You could be lost currently and you still have the opportunity to be saved and be found. And so no one is above that, even if they think they are. They're just lying to themselves. Any questions, comments before we move to the next part?
Jacob.
Oh, we got two. Same pew. Rock, paper, scissors for it.
He can go first.
Oh, so kind.
I was thinking, even in that time, honest tax collector, they would not have lost. In our congregation, we had a couple come in and found out he worked for the IRS. You just couldn't help but feel weird. But they were great. I think he was more in your business side. Now, anyway, he just couldn't help but feel weird when he found out he worked for IRS.
That's funny. Oh, man. That'd have been a good sermon for him, right? He'd have just put him in front pew. He'd have felt real awkward, wouldn't he? Love it. That's good. What do you have, brother?
What was I? Zach just wonder why. He said, "Well, if I've taken anything, I'll pay it back." Well, him being the chief tax collector, keep in mind, he probably hired somebody to help him collect taxes. So this is where I'm not making an excuse for him, but this is where I think there's possibility those other guys collecting taxes could collecting more. And I think this might be protect his monthly. If he had done wrong, he would say, "Well, Lord, I've done wrong." But I have done wrong. He said, "If I have done."
Well, the other thing is too, he's also leaving it open to a honest mistake as well. I don't know if anyone else is. This probably sounds weird, but if you ever walk out of a store and you realize that maybe you still had something left in your buggy, you stole it from the store. You said, "I didn't even know it. I'm apparently a really good thief." And you're like, "I need to take this back in." Right? I've done that before. I'm like, absolutely not. I will not take this home. I'd feel guilty for forever, right? And so it's kind of those things where it's like, could I have accidentally? Now, could he have on purpose? Maybe when he first started and he has changed from there. There could be scenarios, right? And we don't know everything that Zacchaeus is going for or has done and stuff like that. But he said, I'm gonna make it right. I'm going to do it right. And so if I've done something wrong, let's make it right. And that's something that we as well, because when we sin, you have to think, just because we have accepted Christ and we've changed, the person that you sinned against yesterday, might not realize that you've now given your life to Christ at the start, but you also could have committed a crime against them that has now changed their life. is that changing? They're always going to have to deal with that, right? And so just because your sins have been forgiven, they've been washed away, it doesn't take away the detriment that sin has done. It doesn't take away what the sin has already caused. And so there can be scars, there can be trust issues with other folks, there can be different things like that. And so we always need to be trying to make it right and restore as much as we can. Sue?
I still think by Jesus saying, today salvation has come to this house, Jesus would know his heart and would know if he wasn't being honest enough with that previous statement. He would know he really was sincere. And so that's why he could say, and of course none of us could do this, but Jesus could. He could see his heart. And he knew that salvation had come. His heart was good.
No, it's powerful. And Jesus knows when we are, we can put on a show and we can fake one another. You ain't going to trick Jesus. Yeah, you can't fool him. He knows. You can't hide your cards from him and be like, man, I'm, chips all in. I'm going to hope that everyone else folds. Jesus is like, I ain't playing this game. I know what your cards are. And so that's a good thing. If we're living for him, it's a terrifying and scary thing if we are wearing a mask and we are not living for him on the inside, because you're just put on a show, and that show is going to be unraveled sooner rather than later. So for a Christian, it should be a good thing that Christ is all-knowing. Go ahead, brother.
One thing that comes to my mind, he was a sinner. He was forgiven. And then the other people around him, though, they didn't forgive him. And today, when we have brothers and sisters who truly repent, we still find a lot of quote unquote brothers and sisters. God forgave them, but I'm not going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember God putting anybody or Jesus putting anybody on probation. When he forgave them, they were forgiven. But I know even as young as you are, you've seen it in different places where somebody committed a sin and they truly repented, and people don't forgive like they should. If we forget that our forgiveness depends on how we forgive others.
Yeah, this is
The Bible doesn't teach anything any plainer than that.
Yeah, this is exactly what some of us fall into the habit of. We'll go and we'll pray, Lord, forgive me for I did X, Y, Z today, and Lord, just forgive me for that. And then we wake up, or when we wake up, we open up our eyes for our prayer, and then we're like, I can't even believe they'd come to this congregation still. I can't even believe they even look at me after what they did to me 10 years ago. We'll say something crazy. That's about how it feels like it goes, right? We talked about this. It's probably been 6 months now. What did Jesus say about if we don't show forgiveness? We ain't got none ourselves. So, if you want to die on that hill, I guess you can go knock yourself out. You ain't going to like the outcome. So if you want to have a hard heart, if you want to show no forgiveness, and you want to think that they don't deserve it or whatever it is, you are not going to like Judgment Day. Because Christ has already told you you're not going to see the forgiveness. And Christ says, if they come to you how many times in a day? Yeah. And is he like, now everyone pull out your papers and let's keep track? He ain't saying that. He's saying, I don't care how many times. If they're coming with a forgiving heart, you do what? You forgive them. Is that what we want from Christ?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's what I need from Christ. Right. So I don't need to be showing no lack of showing forgiveness, because I know that I need as much as I can get. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to be out there just throwing out forgiveness like it's candy and just forgiving folks that aren't repenting and aren't forgiving folks that they haven't changed. They're not changing any of their actions, right? They've not asked for forgiveness. That's a whole nother topic we could get into, but we need to be mindful. I guess we could study Corinth for this as well. That's something that Paul has addressed if you go later on into the Bible. But we have to be forgiving of one another because Christ has first shown us forgiveness. Who are we to struggle to show forgiveness? Can you imagine Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then what do they do? What do they shortly do after that? They pierce his side. In Acts 2, you go into that lesson, and they're preaching. Is there folks there that maybe mocked Jesus? Possibly. Is the dude that stabbed Jesus in the side there? Maybe, possibly. We don't know. Is there people there that maybe even tried to help arrest Jesus there? Possibly. Is forgiveness open to them? Yes. Stephen. What did Stephen say as he's sitting there getting stoned by who? Well, Saul, I guess, at that time, right?
It's the whole council.
The whole council, right? Can you imagine that reunion in heaven one day? Forgiveness is open. That's the whole key to it. And so we can't be we don't need to be the ones showing a lack of forgiveness, because every single one of us here, I rest assured, I feel like we need as much as we can all get. So I know I definitely do. We're not going to get to the next parable, but for our visitors, if you want to go read 11 through 27, it plays right into this because, and I guess for our members that are going to be here next week, you go ahead and read ahead. But he spoke this parable about this afterwards, and it's about taking what Christ has given to you and making sure that there is some kind of return for it. And he's going to say this most likely in Zacchaeus' house based off of kind of how it flows. And so you have this story of Zacchaeus. Now you have Jesus. He's giving some of these final teachings. And he says, I'm going to give you this. What has he given us today? Has he given us a powerful message? Has he given us forgiveness? Has he given us salvation? Has salvation come today? Yeah, we can contact salvation. We can contact forgiveness. So he's given us this. Now what must we be doing? Giving it. Yeah. And absolutely pouring out to the world. Can we take it? And you're going to see this in this parable afterwards. I guess I'll give a preview. We don't get to take it, put a handkerchief, and hide it, and just not let anybody see it. Is that what Christ wants? Not a chance. What's he want us to do? Get busy. That's something we always complain about, the shape of the world today. And I guess you don't really have a right to complain if you're not out there trying to help correct it. And so if we're worried about the world going into darkness, what are we doing to correct the darkness that the world is falling into? If we're worried about the way the kids are growing up these days, what are we doing to help impact those kids' life and nurture them in the way that Christ would want us to do? If we're worried about the folks that we work with and how they act, and maybe we see theft or something else going on, something shady going in our business, are we being a positive influence, or are we just there sitting going along with it? We need to be the positive influence. We need to be working for the kingdom, because there's nothing more important that we can do. There's nothing more important that we can do. So let us never forget that. And I'm going to, I guess, turn it over. Is there any questions or comments? Snyder Mark, stay for Sunday morning, because Dale always asks for them. I don't.
Well, it's not just forgiveness. Everything that Jesus did, everything that Jesus resisted, exactly the same he expects of us. And he intends with us in yoke with him to help us do those things and to avoid other things.
And I believe Dale mentioned this in Hebrews class on Sunday about striving to the point of bloodshed. Anybody here strove to the point of bloodshed yet for the cross? Okay, Christ did, right? He went all the way to a cross. And so if we're going to strive to be more and more like him, even the early church most definitely strove to some bloodshed. And so we have it quite easy with our persecution in today's world. And so we can continue to work. It's a beautiful example, though, Mark. More work to be done. Anybody else?
This is not the first tax collector that Jesus saved. Matthew was very powerful. He was a tax collector.
He'd be all over the IRS, wouldn't he? No, it's
accidentally taking stuff and I've been guilty of it. And you take it back in, and they are always amazed that you would bring it back in. They may never see me again. God knew it's tax.
Yeah.
Stealing, but if I take it home, that is.
Yep.
But that way. But what if that person walks into church Sunday morning and they see you sitting there, standing there, and they go, "That's the guy that brought this stuff."
Yeah. And they might even ask you, why would you do it? And it's an open door to Bible study right there. I did this in college one time, but I had I don't remember what exam it was now, but the teacher had misgraded it. And it wasn't like a crazy misgrade, but the way that class worked, I think it was only like 8 questions on the test. So like if they misgraded one, it like literally would change your grade by a lot. And anyways, he missed one of mine and I had an A and I was supposed to have like I think it was like a C plus or a B minus is the way it fell. I can't remember how his grading worked, but I went up, I was like, hey, you counted it wrong, but you didn't actually put it down wrong in the score. Anyways, he let me keep it. I was thankful for that, but I felt guilty the whole time. I was like, I gotta go say something after class. So, anyways,
Keep that right.
that's right. Well, there you go. No, thank y'all for being so kind. I'll turn over to Brian and then we'll go to Mark for devotional. Thank y'all.
Turn to 438. Sing.
I sang in the Presbyterian choir. I'd never heard of an invitation. But we have had invitations all of our lives. Almost 33 years ago, I invited her to have a date with me. Within 24 hours, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. That was our first date. I'm glad she accepted my invitation. You probably received in writing an invitation to a wedding. Maybe it was a graduation. Maybe it was a holiday trip. Now, I know that this is the invitation time, and I'm going to take a fairly unusual view of it. Now, I've done this before, but you might not have done this. When I sing, I can kind of lose the train of thought if I'm trying to stay on the bass line and get the notes right. And the first song we sang today, I didn't do very well. So what we're going to do a responsive reading of 2 songs. So I'm going to utter a phrase and I want you to repeat it. Okay? I don't want you to read it. I want you to repeat it. And if it helps you to think about it better, you may even close your eyes if you want to, because the idea is to think about the words. This song is about an invitation. Why did my Savior come to earth?
Why did I say?
And to the humble go. Why did he choose a lowly birth? You know, it's in a stable. Because, finish it. Of course. Why did he drink the bitter cup?
Why did he drink the
Of sorrow
pain and woe? Why? On the cross be lifted up. Finish it. And now he bids me look and live. His grace and power to know. A home in glory he will give. He will give because he loved me so. Till Jesus comes, I'll sing his praise. And then to glory go and reign with him through endless days. Very good. So that's the why of everything. So once we have answered the why and we respond to that invitation because of who he is, because he loved me so, then the job becomes one of to be like him. Because we were created in his image and we were given the choice to stay in it or depart from it when we reach a certain age where we know about these things. Oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer. This is my constant longing and prayer. Gladly, I'll forfeit all of earth's treasures. Jesus, thy perfect likeness to wear. In his image, you get that? Blessed Redeemer, pure as thou art. Come in thy sweetness. Come in thy fullness. Stamp thine own image deep on my heart. Oh, to be like thee, full of compassion, loving, forgiving, tender, and kind, helping the helpless, cheering the fainting, seeking the wandering sinners to find. These are the things you do after you have entered him in baptism. Things to do here on the earth. There are things to do in the world, not to be of the world, but to be in it and to be a positive influence. Oh, to be like thee, lowly in spirit, holy and harmless, patient and brave, meekly enduring cruel reproaches, willing to suffer, others to save. And we just talked about that, didn't we? Oh, to be like thee, Lord, I am coming. Now to receive the anointing divine. All that I have and have I am bringing. Think about that guy that just climbed the tree. Lord, from this moment, all shall be thine. Oh, to be like thee while I am pleading. Pour out thy spirit, fill with thy love,
Pour out the street.
Make me a temple, meet for thy dwelling,
Make me a temple. Eat for thy
fit for a life which thou wouldst approve.
fit for a life which shall
The way we live here in this world. Those songs are inviting us. Are they attractive invitations? Well, there's some to it. Danger, perhaps. Reproach, perhaps, those negative things. But he bore it all, and so can we with him to help. Blood and water. When we're born on this earth, every person in here, blood and water comes out, and we came out. On that altar of the cross, we talked about it. Blood and water after the piercing with a spear. And that presages what is to happen about 50 days later at Pentecost. Blood and water to be born again as Jesus was reborn. From John, the 3rd chapter, Nicodemus said to him, how can a person be born when he is old? He cannot enter his mother's womb a second time and be born, can he? Jesus answered, truly, truly I say to you, unless someone is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which has been born of the flesh is flesh, and that which has been born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not be amazed that I said to you, you must be born again. And that 50 days later, about 3,000 were born again. If you need that, or if you need prayers of this congregation, let's sing the invitation song, Oh, to be like thee.
Oh, to be like